What is up, everyone? Welcome back. Aeneas here. Today it is Monday, so we're gonna do a Monday metagame update and a kind of new mini set, something new that Wizard has done, dropped just about a week ago. So there is a little bit of a shakeup in the standard meta, not a huge one, but we do have some new decks and new cards popping up. So let's talk about standard best of three, historic, and a few new brews that people are trying out. All right, so if we take a look at standard best of one ladder, diamond to mythic for this current new set, the March of the Machine Aftermath, we can see that aggro is doing quite well. Mono white humans at the top spot for today, at least. Mono red aggro, Azorius soldiers, Selesnya enchantment, etc. So, yeah, not a whole lot changed. Aggro is still the king of best of one right now. And if we look at the tier list, the new contender to the stage is this mono white humans list. So mono white humans got this card here. Copper Coat Vanguard. It is a 2-mana 2/2. Each other human you control gets +1/+0 and has Ward 1. So it gives you a little bit, makes it a little bit harder for your opponents to kill your creatures. And it also gives a mini anthem to your other human creatures. So this is really, really annoying in conjunction with Thalia because not only can you not kill Thalia easily now, it's going to have Ward 1, makes it even harder to kill. And so there's just some times where it lines up where like you have a removal, then they play Thalia, you can't use that removal on Thalia. Then maybe the next turn goes around, they drop this one, you still can't use your removal on Thalia. So it's just going to be really, really annoying to try to use targeted removal on these human decks. And so, yeah, that's kind of the power of the human decks with this one. And that's why it's edging out a little bit ahead of the Azorius Soldiers deck, just because they've got this turn 2 mini anthem that also somewhat protects their other creatures, which is pretty powerful. All right, and then we see that at least for now, it's beaten out the soldiers and the Naya humans and even the mono red aggro. And then a few of the other decks are doing okay. Esper, Selesnya, etc. I think this will shift a little bit, but I do think that the aggro decks are still going to be the best in best of one. And yeah, maybe this humans deck will actually just be the best one now over the soldiers one, which is a little bit crazy to think about. But probably they're both really, really good. Looking at the list for the humans deck, here's one I see a lot in the ladder that seems good. This is, got like Hopeful Initiate, Recruitment Officers, maybe some Skrelv, Coppercoat Vanguard, Guardian of New Benalia as your like indestructible one, Intrepid Adversary coming back. This was a good card that is not a soldier, so it didn't see a lot of play recently, but still very, very solid. Adeline, very solid, not a soldier. And Anointed Peacekeeper, not a soldier, so this one's coming back. And Brutal Cathar was in both decks because it's a human and a soldier. And Knight Errant of Aeos, I don't always see this one in there, but it is a human and it does draw you cards, so it is pretty decent, I would say, to fit in the deck. But yeah, that's kind of the general gist of the humans deck. And then if we go to best of three, we see that in today's meta, there's different decks. There's mono red aggro, which people say mono red is not good in best of three standard, but it's always at the top of the standard ladder. So I don't know why people think it's not good. Mono red aggro, pretty much, at least from Untapped GG's data, is always like, I would say top 5. It's always top 5 decks in standard. So I think people just are sleeping on mono red a little bit, which I'm okay with because I'm not a big mono red person. But I don't know why I see a lot of people complain about mono red when the stats clearly show mono red is doing just fine in best of three. And then today we got a lot of Jeskai control players. I think there was a few new Jeskai cards that were kind of interesting from the Aftermath set. But I didn't see anything that was like super good. So maybe this is just kind of the ones from the Pro Tour that people are trying out. And of course, all these other ones as well. Esper, Domain, Reanimator, Midrange. Those were all ones from the Pro Tour that people were playing. But if we go to the tier list, we see something very interesting, and this is something that hasn't happened since maybe 2 sets or so now. But Mono White Humans is the top of the standard best of 3 ladder, and this is really unusual for aggro to be the top deck, and it might get dethroned later. It probably will, but just shows you that this card is actually really powerful, and Thalia is still really powerful. And mono red also at the top, and so we might have a time where aggro is actually the best deck in standard for a little bit, both in best of 1 and best of 3, because they keep pumping out these really good white cards. And how can you deal with it? How can you remove their creatures? How can you get rid of them? They're so annoying. So yeah, maybe prepare for an aggro meta for a while. Seems like it might be the case. Another new contender is Rakdos Sacrifice. We got a new Obnixilis card, which whenever you like ping the opponent for 1 damage, it puts a counter on something and has some other effects as well. So that card is pretty strong in making the Sacrifice deck just a little bit better, enough that it's you know, up here at almost 60% win rate. So yeah, Sacrifice is no joke right now. I haven't played against it much on the ladder, but I've seen a lot of streamers playing it and doing well with it, so it seems pretty viable. The rest is pretty standard. I guess enchantments also get quite a bit of new stuff. Calyx being the big one. We'll see that in a second here, though. But I assume that this Rakdos midrange, at some point, it's going to creep back up again to the top as soon as maybe people stop messing around with some of the more janky decks. Then we might see the Rakdos move up. Though if aggro gets really good, you know, Invoke Despair gets worse, and that might be enough to push Rakdos out of the meta. Not sure. We'll have to see. All right, so historic, in the historic best of 3, Diamond to Mythic, not a whole lot of data yet, but I was really interested by the fact that we don't see any of the standard decks here like doing super great. This top deck so far is 4-color control, which if we take a look at the list, it's got a lot of counter spells using the new Change the Equation card, and a few of the old ones that were already in there, and not a whole lot of other new cards. We see it's got some discard, it's got some draw with Expressive, Crucius, the just super over the top bonkers card. So even Control is playing Crucius. That's tells you how good it is. Snapcaster was a pretty new addition, and then the Fairy Hero of Dominaria. So pretty interesting to see that this is a 4-color deck that they're somehow making work. But I guess you really kind of need to be playing Crucius in a lot of decks in Historic to keep up. And it ramps you into your Teferi or into your other things. Gives you treasure to cast your 4-color spells. So I guess it kind of just does everything for you. So maybe that's why it's good. All right. But I thought that was kind of cool, and maybe it's something I'll try out in Historic when I get bored of Standard. And of course, Reanimator still doing well. The Bant Hammer, another good one in best of 3. But if we take a look at the best of 1 format, we see Reanimator currently doing really well. It's in the top spot with Atraxa and Sarah's Emissary and things like that. We see the Izzet Wizards, also very, very solid. Best of 1 deck. It's an aggro deck. It's pretty resilient, so it makes sense. Bant Hammer, I mentioned, is here. Tamir Mill. Jeskai Control, not quite as good as some of the top ones, but still pretty good. And then some things like Mono Red Burn, and there's a few other decks that, like Belcher, Izzet Belcher, is probably mixed in with this one, but Izzet Belcher also very solid. Best of 1 deck in Historic. I don't think a lot of the new cards really affected Historic much, at least not yet, so most of this is the same as what we've seen before. I did take a look at the 4-color Reanimator deck that was in the top of this meta right here, and it doesn't look anything super special. And I don't even know if there's any new cards from the previous set. Got a Traxa, it's got Sarah's Emissary, got Tyvar to help mill you. So I think this is kind of just an Abzan Reanimator shell that we've seen in the past. So maybe it's just situated good against like the Hammer deck or something like that. And that's why it's at the top. All right, well, that's it. It's kind of a slow week for tournaments, so there was no big tournaments this week. We did have the PT Pro Tour last week, which we talked about already. So maybe that's why, and we got the new set, the new mini set, March of the Machines Aftermath, that just came out. So probably people are just trying new things, not a whole lot of reason to play in tournaments. So yeah, let's take a look at some of the brews with the new cards that people have been trying out. So this is a Japanese player, and they were doing very well with this sort of auras deck, I guess, Calyx with some auras. We've got the Light Paws here, which is similar to like Shram, the Artificer in Historic, and lots of hex-proof auras and creatures with flash and Michiko's and things like that. So this is we've actually been seeing quite a bit of new cards for aura related decks. And so I guess there might just be enough at this point where you can play this kind of play one creature down, protect it, and then pump it up really large. And then Calyx just helps because it gives you +1/+1 counters. It lets you clone your creatures whenever they deal combat damage. So it's a pretty scary card in itself. So yeah, I don't know how good this is, but this person was doing well, at least had a win streak on the ladder with it. So pretty interesting. Another deck, we got Asian Avenger. He's playing with the Spark Rupture. And this is a card that looks like a Planeswalker Hate. It's 3 mana, it draws you a card, and it says each Planeswalker with 1 or more loyalty counters on it loses all abilities and toughness equal to the number of loyalty. Sorry, loses all abilities and is a creature with power and toughness equal to the number of loyalty counters. So turns your Planeswalkers into creatures, which means they can be killed. But if you have a high loyalty Planeswalker, then it becomes a pretty large creature. And so their Asian Avenger here is playing a bunch of the green and white Planeswalkers that have a lot of loyalty, like Ren, the Realmbreaker, Ajani. We see the blue Jace here, which has a pretty good amount of loyalty. Archangel Elspeth, the Fairy, Tezzeret, Wandering Emperor. So all these banned Planeswalkers, and then you drop the Spark Rupture probably mid to late game to like swing in with a surprise like 20 damage or whatever if you have a few Planeswalkers on the battlefield. So kind of, I guess, a finisher card in a lot of cases, but maybe if you have an opening where you feel like the opponent's out of removal, you could drop it and start swinging in with like a 5/5 Planeswalker. Interesting, and it draws you cards, so worst case scenario, it's not dead when you play it, you get another card from it. So yeah, that's pretty cool to see the innovation on that one. Of course, we have Ash Lizzle here. She loves the Rakdos colors, and she's playing Ob Nixilis, the Kingpin. This is the one that people have been mentioning was really good with Oni Cult because you deal damage, then it puts a counter. And there's even a combo you can do with the All Will Be One enchantment card where you have an infinite combo. But this is a less memey version, less like against the odds version, where you're just pinging the opponent and pumping up your creatures. And lots of sacrifice stuff going on as well. But pretty cool. So Sack might be back. We saw actually in the standard tier list, was it? Yeah. Rakdos Sacrifice was doing pretty well, almost 60%, and that's because of the Ob Nixilis Kingpin card there. All right, and the last new brew we got for you today. This is from Croakies, and it's a green-white enchantment deck, again with Calyx, and we have Catilda returning, a very powerful card that never found a super great home. And even Ozlith, because Calyx gives counters, so Ozlith doubles your counters and lets you put on counters and stuff like that. So kind of a cool enchantment matters, counter matters type deck. This one seems really solid to me. It looks really cool. And he went 13 and 2, so seems like no slouch. So I think the meta did change a little bit with this mini set. We got enchantments coming back. We got Rakdos Sacrifice coming back. And then we got the, I'm not sure about this one, maybe, but we got the mono white humans deck doing quite well as well. So maybe 3 new-ish decks. I mean, they're still very similar to what was there before, but a little bit different versions of the same archetype in standard. Um, and I'm trying out quite a few brews. I'm not doing my top 5 new brews because this is just a mini set, but yeah, I have a few ideas coming out like vampires and things like that. So we'll see. Maybe I'll find something that works well in the format. I guess that's it. Let me know what you think of March of the Machine Aftermath. You like this little mini set, you hate it. Let me know what you think about the 3-year rotation. I'm already really feeling sick of some of those cards like Fable the Mirror Breaker. Just so disappointing they didn't rotate out. Yeah. All right. That's going to be it for today. Until next time. See ya.